Hello everybody, this is Anthony for Investors Underground. Today I have the opportunity to speak with Cody, aka Odd Stock Trader. He's a trading veteran with over 12 years of experience, and he's a longtime member of the Investors Underground community. If you know him from the IU rooms or follow him on social media, you know he loves to trade OTC stocks and has a knack for researching hot new sectors and themes to trade. He's also traded cryptocurrency, invested in NFTs, and we'll get to chat about a little bit of that. He also does a great job being able to separate himself from his trading desk and actually go out and enjoy a vacation or two. So thank you, Cody, for being here to chat with me today. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic to be here. I've been kind of waiting for this since you announced that you were looking to do it. So
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much I want to talk to you about, but let's just start from the beginning. When did you get involved in stocks and what drew you to them?
yeah, so the story kind of goes as far as, I was a person in the online poker days of, high school time. It was a thing to do. I loved it. I'd always played poker. I loved like the risk reward, being able to interact with people and take their money. So I was kind of big into that. It was like my hobby until the feds basically took down every website. I don't know if it was Black Thursday, Black Friday, whatever it was back in 2010. And that kind of just destroyed my daily hobby of, playing some online poker. So I had to kind of look for something else to do to occupy my mind and continue to, not just be lazy and watch TV, which a lot of society does. So I looked into stocks. I knew I could probably figure it out if I was decent at poker because I'd won quite a few tournaments in my day, and just kind of took it from there. And it's a daunting process now looking back at it, everything you learn.
Were there any lessons or concepts that you discovered during your poker days that you were able to apply and transfer over to your trading?
The translation of the risk versus reward is the biggest and easiest, just because the nature of poker is a lot of odds. Same kind of thing with stocks, and people were more behind the computer than there are algorithms these days, but still the same kind of concept. You're trading against other people.
And what was your original, thoughts? What were you looking at stock-wise? Was it the same sort of things you're looking at now? Were there different stocks you were looking to trade then?
Well, it ties into, I would say, why I chose my username on Twitter. I basically was broke when I started trading. I was getting 25 bucks a week from my wife, or our money that we had very little of, working at the Marriott, and I would save it, and I would save it and save it until I got up to about 500 bucks. I think I remember one of the first trades I took, other than Fannie Mae back in 2008, just because I saw that it went way down. The first stock that I bought was, unbeknownst to me, a pump and dump that went down 50% the next day. So I lost half my money in one day, and I was like, well, great, this is fantastic. But it's all, if you know that it's something that you want to do, and it's very possible to do it, it just takes a lot of time. You learn a lot of lessons, and those things, they just add up over time if you want to actually make a career out of this.
That's awesome because, from humble beginnings, you were able to grow your account. I think there's a lot of people that go the opposite direction where they have plenty of money, but they don't necessarily grow it.
And I think that's, again, back to my name, is I chose it because I didn't think that I would make a lot of money trading like Google, Apple, Microsoft, all these big name stocks. I'm like, they're not going to move, 50 to 100% in a day, which is what I need if I'm trying to make, $100 off of $1,000, in a day. I'm not going to just be able to buy these stocks. So I'm like, I got to look for some odd things that move on the day that I have no clue what these companies are. So that was kind of the inspiration, I guess, for the name Odd Stock Trader, was that I figured at the beginning I was probably going to just be trading some very odd stocks, which I still do today, but I had landed on like sub-penny stocks back in the day. They were kind of my first foray into like, well, if I buy, it's funny how it all came back during COVID, where Dogecoin was 0.0034. Like, I was looking for stocks that were super cheap that I could buy a lot of shares of, that maybe if it went up, 10 times what I put in, I'm gonna make a lot of money. So it's kind of funny to see that happen again with a large part of society in crypto. So that was the inspiration for the name.
That's awesome. I didn't really know what the actual inspiration was, but I mean, could sort of assume that, but didn't know without much specificity. That's great. I mean, and it also shows that things come back around again, right? If you trade long enough, you might end up seeing some of those old patterns, even at a 10-year, 20-year sort of basis.
Yeah, and I think that's very true, and it's something I've kind of preached before is whether or not it's just a memory thing. I generally remember trades from 10 years ago. I remember how a stock acts based off of certain things, and all that plays into a part whether you have a good memory or not. I mean, that's kind of your God's gift or not, but it's funny how the history and moves in the past that you have gone through and learned make a big difference in just your overall trading, 5-10 years later.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Use that experience to your advantage. And when did you get involved with Investors Underground? When did you discover Investors Underground?
So I guess that's a story of itself. I was just trying to find something that had, like-minded individuals that were trading stocks. And, there's so many today because platforms are so easy. Chat rooms are very easy to make. There's Discord. There's all these different things where, a lot of people don't realize in 2010, there was really only a few, just software platforms that ran chat rooms. So I had found some other ones. There was one very prominent person that I actually signed up to first, and then realized, I'm not going to jive with this style, this person. So I continued my search, found Nate posting stuff on Twitter. I'm like, how's this guy making 10 grand a day? And back in then I was like, this is if he can do it, I can do it. That was my mentality. It's just from all the sports I've played in my life. I'm like, well, this guy can do it. I can do it. I might not be able to with my $2,000 to start with, but if I keep going, I'll definitely do it. So I signed up for Nate's room with an email, and back then he was doing free trials. I think I had used 10 different emails, signed up for different trials for free, and then Cam finally came and was like, all right, you need to pay for this. So I signed up for a little while, ended up leaving in 2000, I think it was 2012, 2013, because I was like, okay, if I do this, I don't want to be 100% dependent on it, because it's an amazing tool. Nate's Room is a better tool than any scanner or anything that I've paid for, just because the idea flow is just that phenomenal. And I left, and then I came back in, I think it was 2014, because I had a little bit more money. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna sign up for a year. I'm gonna buy the DVDs, and I'm gonna learn his actual process that he has. And that was an amazing decision as far as looking back on it 7-8 years ago now, was to do that, because I watched those DVDs probably 6 or 7 times, because there's always something that when you watch it, you miss it. So I went back and I watched every single little thing, and yeah, and then it's pretty much been since then. I think it was late 2015 he asked me to be a moderator, and here we are.
That's great. I mean, using multiple emails kind of just speaks to the value of the service, right? If you're willing to go through those measures, it speaks to how important the room was for you. And I think, yeah, that's awesome. And has your trading, changed since you first started in the IU room?
Well, the market is in and of itself changed. I remember a lot of the early things. I made a lot of the first amount of money that got me over, pattern day trader amount was the weed stocks moves in 2014. With multiple accounts, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna finally move it into one account. But as far as OTCs were a big thing, pump and dumps were even bigger back then. People these days probably don't even know what APS is, but it was a newsletter called Awesome Penny Stocks, and basically it was a big pump group that moved stocks absolutely insanely with multi-million dollars in volume. And those are the days of old where that stuff doesn't really happen anymore. OTC market's gotten a little bit tighter, so also be aware that if you're into this, market changes, and the stuff that you may be great at now may disappear. So it's just one of those things that you pick up little tidbits of, oh, I kind of remember this, I remember the action, I remember how this reacted on specific news to different things, and all that stuff just kind of accumulates in your mind. And if you stay really focused with it, a lot of stuff that because I read a lot, which makes a difference in just finding different things and what might be going on in the world. And when I see like a news headline, I'll be like, oh, I remember reading about this 3 years ago and the importance of it, and that all can play in a factor if there's public stocks that are tradable with those type of things.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's one of the things I wanted to touch on a little later for sure, was your ability to find hot stocks and hot sectors. One of the things I also noticed, since you had mentioned that you read a lot, is that, whether, I don't know if it's probably because you do read so much, but whether it's, the latest drones or just cryptocurrency itself, NFTs and blockchain, it definitely seems like, your understanding and proficiency in technology is beyond what the average person and the average maybe traders is. And so would you say that, technology and your interest in it is one of your strengths as a trader? And is technology one of like your investment interests?
I would say it's a monster advantage for me because the way that I've kind of approached things because of, getting into trading, it kind of shifts what you just do and what you focus on, what you look at. So technology was always kind of a thing. My dad was always kind of a computer guy. I wanted a computer when I was 12 for Christmas. Hounded my parents for it and finally got it. Back in the free net zero internet days where you just sign up and you get to surf the internet until you're, somebody picks up with a phone type of stuff. But I think just the evolution of, technology and different stuff like that, reading books on what I would anticipate is likely to be, an industry or, a technology that's going to be used, I hone into it. So, I remember here, I guess a good way to start this is, Bitcoin. I remember hearing about Bitcoin actually back in like really, really early when it got posted on some forums. I remember looking at it thinking it was 10 cents because history had taught me internet currencies had failed in 1999. There was two currencies. One of them I remember specifically is called Beans. Basically went to zero. People got slaughtered. So the first time I read it and I looked at it, I was like, oh, this is stupid. It was like 10 cents. I look back, 2013, 2012 era, and I remember reading about the Silk Road and this technology that's being used, Bitcoin, to facilitate transaction. It goes from $50 to like 200 and right back to 50 in the matter of a week. But that kind of always sparks my interest. Something to me, when I see something go up insane amounts, I kind of focus on, okay, why is this trading the way it is? Why is this becoming more valuable? Same thing with Tesla. Like when I went and test drove a Tesla, I was like, this is like, I want this car, I want this technology, I want this as a part of my daily life. And I think that's really all technology is to improve your daily life. So, with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and all that stuff, I bought, again, every single book I could on the subject. And I think there were like 15, 16 books that I read. And, I'm like, okay, and I go at things with a very skeptical point of view until it kind of clicks in my head where I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I just asked myself, I'm like, is this likely to be something used throughout the world? A big case point was like Africa, all those things for monetary things. And we're actually slowly starting to see that become a reality because technology takes a lot longer than people realize to become a thing. And it's like drones. Same thing with drones is I think drones will be very commonplace, but there's a lot of different laws and all that stuff. But like drone deliveries for everything is, especially once electrification, which is where we're all headed for cars and everything, it will be a very likely thing that we see. But it definitely gives me a big advantage whenever I see something come across like the news, whether or not it clicks or I've read about it. So it's a huge advantage. It's a long-winded answer, but yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, because you were one of the first traders that I'm aware of that I saw not only trading cryptocurrency, but making a use case for like basic attention token, Brave browser, and sort of making this connection between this thing that people already didn't understand, but showing that it has real impacts and real utility.
And I think that makes a difference. I still use the Brave browser today. To me, it was, and I think a lot of people have probably seen this, the creepy ads that would come across after I would talk to my wife in privacy back in like 2012. I'm like, all right, how is this happening? How am I getting an ad on Google for something I said out loud that I didn't even type, didn't even search? I'm like, something's going on here. So I'm not like a privacy nut, but privacy is very important in just society. for a lot of reasons. So I was like, why am I giving this information away for free? Number one, for them to make money off of it, and me have my attention pulled in different directions, seeing different ads. Because even on Instagram, I still click on ads that I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting. But the intrusiveness of the way it was going about is what did that. So I knew that there was, that was back in the ICO days. I knew that there's one. I looked at it. There was only like 300,000 users to Brave, and I was like, all right, is it decent? Is it worth me? Number one, I ask myself this question: is it worth me taking the time to either download it on my phone or download it on my computer? Because I think we've, as a society, reached this point of app fatigue, where I don't want to download a new app on my phone for something. So that's a big wall to get through. Is just getting people to use stuff, and that takes a long time.
Yeah. And on that subject of cryptocurrencies, did you find that they trade different than normal stocks? Maybe, popular NASDAQ stocks, and do they trade more similar to maybe the OTC names, or are they sort of their own animal?
So I think what there was a big part of it is even 2016, 2015. I never really even traded them until late 2016 type of a thing, and they acted exactly like OTCs. So it was very familiar to me because the volume was light, the action was light, and usually if the bid fails, this thing comes down in a pattern that I've seen 1,000 times. So it was very familiar to me. The speed was very familiar to me, and it was just like, well, this is easy. And now I don't have to worry about halts. I don't have to worry about filings. I don't have to worry about more shares hitting the market because everything's public. You can see it. So there were big advantages to that. Number one, it was 24 hours a day with, I can't remember if it was zero commissions or not on some of these platforms. It either was or was very low. And I had mentioned, if somebody's below pattern day trader amounts, cryptos, there's no restrictions. You could day trade with $1,000. So the fact that you're able to get these repetitions in, and it kind of pulls back to poker too. Like in the online days, you could play, which I did, 20 tables at once, and you would speed up your learning curve really fast versus being just one hand at a time playing live like people did for years. It was the same kind of thing. The more repetitions that you get, which crypto gave the advantage earlier, and the action was a lot easier. It was very smooth, where now there's a lot of algorithms in there, and moves are just mind-bending sometimes. Things go straight up and straight back down the next day, where that didn't used to happen. So a lot of different things. A lot of things change when markets get tighter and more participants enter them. Action just changes a little bit, which is why NFTs went on a mind-bending, still can't believe it, tear as far as valuations, because the market's just inefficient. There's no way to really short these one-of-one things. So it's very interesting.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that, but yeah, NFTs sort of, either they'll lose value, but there's not necessarily someone on the bid sort of selling or taking it down necessarily.
Yeah, so I'm sure somebody will probably figure out a way to aggregate collections of these 10,000 PFPs to somehow do derivative shorts on, Bored Apes or those type of things. It's not really there yet, but I think that could be a reason as to why a lot of people base their decisions off of money. Let's be real, a lot. I think there's a reason for that, but as far as stratospheric levels for some of these things, I think Bored Apes went from $400 to, I think the peak was $400,000 for one. I'm like, that's nothing I ever anticipated when I started reading about NFTs and looking into the technology. I figured this has got some use cases for gaming. It's got some use cases for verification. And I've always said this, it's having a public ledger is a major positive and also a double-edged sword as far as for different things. So once somebody knows your address, they know it forever, type of a thing. So it's a weird thing, but I still think blockchain and public ledgers have a big use case that's still out there. It takes a long time for this stuff to be a daily use thing. So now they're selling houses as NFTs in Florida, so it's interesting market.
Yeah, it's still a young technology. When we think back to the internet, which now is just commonplace for everybody, NFTs, blockchain itself is still relatively young in the grand scheme of software as we know it. But it seems like we're in a little bit of like a consolidation period or a crypto winter, as some call it. But what lessons do you think people can draw from or take away from the recent consolidation in crypto?
I think it still kind of goes back to like the beginning reasons as to why you are even doing, like why you're even trading in the first place. So like, obviously NFTs, I think it's a weird ride for me as far as saying these are going to be a thing as far as from the technology standpoint, because I kind of understood it. As far as why they'd be a thing, I did not expect the rampant speculation and valuations to go where they went. So, a lot of people got into it because they were trying to make money and flip these basically JPEGs on the internet. So I think it comes back to persistence. Like you have to be doing this for a reason, not just to, it's the hot thing to do. There's a lot, like even right now, like I tweeted the other day that, it feels like most of the Robinhood traders from 2020 and 2021 are pretty much gone out of the market. And I think Robinhood's stock price might reflect some of that. Granted, its valuation was ridiculous to begin with, but those people that stay persistent as to why they got into it in the first place, it's just an evolution of learning and repetition, and you start to figure things out. And then when you, on a daily basis, start making more money consistently for months than your job, then it's like, maybe I can make a run at this. So, and I would suggest if you do that, make sure you have more money than you think you do. Because when I got into it, it was a rough year at the beginning. So
that's great advice. Have more and plan for it, but also what brings people to the market. I mean, I guess it's sort of similar for stocks as well, right? Some people come because they think it's going to be easy and they'll have a Lambo by the end of their first trading year.
Very, very few people can do that. If maybe one out of a million, if that's even a range, but yeah.
Yeah. And so whether it's stocks or crypto, what's sort of, or even the, hot sector names, something that's new, whether it's like, marijuana stocks or maybe some like psilocybin sort of newer names. You do a great job of being able to find these hot sectors and these theme names and really just like get in early, and it seems like you do well. What's your research, process like? How do you find them, and what's that generally look like? I know you said that you do a lot of reading and research, but
I mean, I would say it comes down to the reading. I used to, other than the last few years, last year I would say, I like to travel a little bit, but if it comes back to that same thing, when I see something move, a good distance, I start to look at it a little bit more. I'm like, all right, why is, and it was, so the whole shroom thing came into about because of actually watching Billions. I had known about it in the past, but there was the first episode, I think it was like season 3 or season 4 of Billions. They're doing, I think it was ayahuasca in a tent in Alaska or somewhere like that. And I'm like, this is interesting. So I started looking, basically I went to like OTC markets, I went to everywhere to see if there's any publicly listed like psychedelic stocks. And there was like, I think there was 1 or 2, and the first one was MindMed, which was, it's a different ticker. It was a different ticker back then. And then I'm like, well, okay, why is, number one, I started asking myself all these questions, why could this be important? And then it gets down to looking into the research of these different things. And even on one of the other interviews that I've done, it's more to me about, all right, I'll take this risk as far as nobody really knows about this, so I'm going to buy it here, maybe 20%, 30% lower. If I'm wrong, then I just take a loss and I forget about it. But as far as the strategy of getting into these, sometimes I shotgun it. I use that term from somebody else, but I'll buy out all of them. And if there's one that's going, so like a good example would be, like, let's go back to MindMed. When it went, I started looking for anything else that would show up. And then I would look for updated filings on any companies that are maybe going into that business. So that kind of makes a difference. Because now there are, I mean, I have a list of them. There's like 70 different mushroom or psychedelic stocks. But again, it came down to, why is it important? So reading some of these studies, like face value type of stuff. I don't get super in depth, like deep studies type stuff on these, because I'm bad at biotech trading in general, but it's still a technology thing, and reading like the benefits of people that when they do this, it's like, wow, it's not just something to, get high off of. It actually can change people's minds for the better as far as like PTSD and that type of stuff. So when it actually has real world benefits, then I started looking at it a little bit more and more, and that's just kind of how my process goes. Is if I get interested into it, I'm probably going to want to learn everything there is to learn about it and go from there.
Which is great, because it seems like you're doing far more due diligence than maybe a whole lot of other traders who might see something move on day one, don't necessarily dig into any filings, don't understand how many potential names are in the space. It seems like you're going through a relatively substantial amount of due diligence.
Yeah, and I guess I don't even realize it, but I do. But even like yesterday, I know this is going to be a recorded video, but like when this AREC stock went because of whatever it was, I want to know why it's moving. Where a lot of people just trade it because it's moving, I want to know why is it moving, which makes a big difference. So I take 10 minutes, I look at AREC, and it went because basically a ultraviolet C PR, and I'm like, okay, well, I know that I have a list from the past of these UVC companies when COVID hit, and one of them was AUVI, and I'm like, it hasn't really moved, so I'm just gonna buy it, because if it catches, I pretty much bought the bottom with like a set 20% risk. And that's that's an approach that it sounds weird, but it's worked. When I just shotgun buy some of these things, some of them don't work, some of them fail, but you only need 1 out of 10, 1 out of 5 to go, and you're gonna make money even on the losers on the other one. So, and the stock basically doubled in the day. And the funny part was Nate sends me a message. He's like, oh, that was a UV company. He's like, I was like, yeah, it was obvious. He's like, oh, I didn't even know. I would have bought it if I had known it was a UV company. I'm like, well, and I'm trying to get him even into understanding, figure out what companies do even a little bit, and it gives you a big advantage on like just entries, I would say.
At what point, if something is not quickly profitable, at what point are you willing to say like, okay, maybe this hasn't made it yet, but it eventually will, versus when you'll just simply cut something and just stop trading it or stop holding it?
Yeah, so with that approach, it's kind of like there's a head of a snake. So what that means is, an example would be like Tesla. So during 2020, Tesla started going crazy, and it was the head of the snake, which if it starts to go, it starts to drag everything else along with it. So when it started going crazy, people started looking at all these other EV companies, so like Blink and anything that was EV related. Same kind of concept with like mushrooms or anything with a theme. Those stocks now are going to follow that based off of its momentum. Whether they're worth any money or not, it sometimes doesn't matter, because even then short sellers will come in and they'll try to pound it, and then they'll be wrong. It'll keep going higher. But how I base it is off of the head of the snake. So if Tesla were to fail for like a week or a day or whatever, everything else is going to get dragged down with it. So you have to kind of keep your eye on that main leader to kind of understand, all right, maybe this one hasn't moved at all. Maybe I'm just wrong, and you cut it. But usually before any entry, unless it's like a quick news event or something that I have to be fast on, I look at it, I say, all right, I'm going to risk it to here based off of my time frame. If I'm wrong, then I just take the loss. So a big thing for people to get over is you're going to have a lot of losing trades when you trade, but as long as the winners outpace those, it doesn't really matter, and it's just part of the game.
And it sounds almost like the idea of maybe like sympathy stocks that follows like a leader, and when the catalyst for maybe the main leader doesn't work out, the sympathy stocks, they don't necessarily have a reason to be at their elevated level.
Yeah, I mean, if that main one just goes, I mean, people have that same process. I just don't think that they realize it. So when one stock moves 100 or 200% in a day, psychologically people are gonna be like, oh, I missed this one. Is there something else that is in this sector that maybe I can join this trend? It's a slow process that I don't think just people that day trade realize they're doing, but they're doing it. By trading for 10 years, it's like a snap decision where I'm like, all right, I see this, I'm gonna look for the other ones. and I'm going to buy them pretty much all. If I'm wrong, I'm pretty much buying the bottom anyways, and I just go from there. But yeah.
Another area that I wanted to talk to you about was sort of stepping away from screens. As important as it is to be there and present and focus on what you're trading, when do you decide to take time away from the screens, and how do you, is it a conscious effort? How conscious is it for you to step away and take some time off?
Yeah, I think it has to be a conscious effort, because if you don't schedule something, you'll probably just go to the screens every single day. So I made a point that when I hit a certain level monetarily, when I first started, if I hit this level, I'm just gonna take a vacation for 3 months. I'm gonna do what I want. Obviously, I hit that level early, 2021, or it was late 2020, I think it was. And I just started booking stuff. I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna go here. Where, now that I did that, and I basically spent the last year either cruising or going to Mexico or traveling or whatever it was, that was a reason why I got into trading in the first place, was that I wanted free time to do what I wanted when I wanted. And I told myself, if I don't just do it, will I ever do it? Or I'm just gonna keep coming back to my computer every single day. So, when I kind of hit that psychological number, I was like, all right, where are we going? I want to go. I want to celebrate this. And then it just it snowballed, and I'm like, okay, we need to slow down because I'm not at home anymore. But kind of looking back on that, I would say I'm probably going to do it mostly during the summers now, because Nate even knows this about me. Summers, I'm usually absolutely terrible at trading. I don't know what it is. I think that my theory is that most people are outside anyways, and not a lot of people are in front of their computers, and the market action just isn't as good. At least that's my perception from pre-COVID to when I started. So I always noticed that November, December, January, February was where I made 90% of my money every single year. And then during the summer, I'd slowly just give a lot of it back and be just pissed. I'm like, why am I even here? Why don't I just go outside? It's so nice out. It's sunny. It's 100 degrees. But I would say you just kind of have to plan those things. And I've gotten on Nate. I'm like, dude, you just go somewhere for a week and just take some time off, which I don't know if he really has done a whole lot. But getting away from the screens, I think, is just as important when you've spent 10 years in front of them as doing everything else in life. So taking that time off is, I think, important, because then it gives the monetary stuff, it makes it real. Where sometimes all this stuff is just numbers on a computer screen, when you realize, oh, this is actual money that I can go do stuff with. So it's just that kind of a thing as far as the balance goes, is just plan somewhere you've always wanted to go. If you've never wanted to go anywhere, then I guess I can't help you, but I like to go visit different places.
There's actually a number of things that I find really helpful about what you just said. One of which is that a lot of traders that I've spoken to, at least, do mention this. What part of the reason that they want to keep trading is because of quality of life, being able to do what they want, trade when they want. And that's, I guess you could say, one of maybe the perks of trading. But also, when I spoke to Nate, he also mentioned, like you had said, that he does go through and understand when he makes, the best trades, when he makes money, when he, types of setups that make him the most money when. And so it sounds like you have a very similar process as well. I'm sure some traders do that. Maybe more traders ought to realize when they make the most money, when they lose the most money, and maybe try to save it and go on a vacation like you do.
Yeah, introspection, I think. You're doing this stuff basically, granted there's chat rooms and we have all these people that we interact with, but when it comes down to it, you're in a room by yourself for the most part, in front of screens. So, human interaction can be limited sometimes. There's been days where I haven't left the house for a week other than to go to the gym. But, those things, as far as taking the time off, you're going to learn that over time. Okay, I've noticed this pattern that March, April, May, something's different about the market, or I just can't trade as well. You realize these things, and you just have to look at it and say, you know what? Do I have to trade today? Do I have to, do I want to go golfing and ruin the market for everybody else? So it's like, it's one of those things that you learn over time as far as what you're good at. Some people are great at biotech stocks. I'm not so much. So when I notice that a lot of just biotechs are moving, which they were in the last few weeks, I'm like, hands off. Like, why am I going to trade this? I don't understand a lot of these moves, and maybe I will later, just because now I'm starting to read more about just, I read a lot about marijuana stuff. I read a lot about mushrooms and psychedelics and all that. And so maybe I get really, really good at biotechs. So that's a thing. So even like today, there was a post in the room, and it took me 2 seconds to read it. As soon as I read it, I knew it was a big deal as far as for the sector of this, what this patent was for. I'm like, that's a monster deal. Then I look at the valuation of the company. I'm like, the total addressable market of this patent alone in the next 5 years is worth, 5 times, 10 times what the company's worth. So maybe biotechs will be what I'm amazing at later, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, that's also great too, being able to understand what your perceived weakness and being able to work on that to turn it into a strength, or at least be a lot stronger than you originally were on it. I think that's great. I mean, it gives traders things to aspire to and ways to get better. And another question I had for you related to getting away from the screens is, I'm curious, when you are away on vacation, on a cruise, in Mexico, do you ever find new ideas, new trades when you're out, new things that interest you that you could trade while you're out actually mixing it up in the real world?
Yeah. So I think a big thing, and I've realized this too, when I go hang out with friends, everybody's got a different world, different things they care about, different interests, so when I go out and hang out with friends and just even meet people on cruise ships or wherever it is, if I have the conversation with the people, if it's something that they're passionate about, just meeting somebody, if I just met you and you start talking to me about something that you like or a passion and I have no idea about it, I'm probably going to listen, as long as you're not talking about, a multi-level marketing scheme, that type of thing. But which is easy to detect for me in about 30 seconds. But, listening to those interests, it can be like, oh, well, this is what is consuming this person's, psyche at the moment in time. And maybe that's something I should look at too, so. And my friends are in different fields, and everybody does different things. So it's very interesting to talk to people and find out, what do they care about? And that may be something that I have never even looked at. So, just as a trader, again, I go look at and see if there's any stocks in that area, type of a thing. But yeah, having conversations, going out while on cruises, I limit my phone use. I give you like 150 free minutes on a cruise, and I use it all, but it's like 5 minutes at a time. So I still like to keep up with what's going on in the world. But yeah, like meeting different people, hearing what they have to talk about, it definitely gives you things to think about that maybe you never even thought that you would have.
Yeah. And when you do finally get back to the screens, what's that process like? Do you jump right in? Do you give it some time? Do you have a routine?
I think I've done it a few times here and there. So if I know that I'm coming back and if I leave again in a week or 2 weeks, I generally don't focus as much. Like I'll just feel like, oh, whatever. Maybe I'll set some price alerts. But like on this, after getting back on this last one, I know I'm going to be home for a duration of time. Now I can kind of zone into it, and it'll probably take me at least maybe a week, a few weeks. With this market, gapping up, gapping down every day, it's like, whoa. So it's hard to really like zone in on something, but it usually takes like a day or two, maybe 3 or 4, for me to like kind of get like a hone as far as reading the chat room and just seeing where the interest is in the market. Because I can't just immediately come back and be like, oh, I'm gonna do this. Sometimes I'll get lucky and the market will be amazing. Like, I hurt my hand the other day, and on Monday I didn't even trade, and I came back on Tuesday and the market went crazy. So, but again, it's having 10 years of, I think, experience being like, how this is acting. I've seen it before. It's probably going to have a nice move, and you kind of go from there. But usually 3 or 4 days. But unless I'm leaving again in a week, then I probably don't even look. I don't care too much at that point because I'm like, well, I just got to pack my bags, clean my clothes, and then I'm leaving again. So
Well, I guess the last part that I wanted to go through was maybe like a lightning round, if that's okay with you.
quick answers. Okay, I like this.
What would you say is your favorite trading setup, like chart pattern?
ABCD long, which is a coin from Nate's DVDs.
What's your favorite trading tool? Broker, scanner, platform, etc.
I have to go with Thinkorswim just because I've used their charts for 12 years.
How about your favorite technical indicator?
VWAP. And price alerts. Price alerts make a bigger difference.
What is the biggest mistake that new traders make?
Overconfidence, I feel like.
What's the best piece of advice you've received from another trader?
Ooh. Slow down. That's a loaded answer, but slow down.
What's the biggest myth about trading?
Biggest myth. That most people fail. I think failure is in your own mind, and if you persist at it, you'll figure it out.
How about your number one trading rule, or maybe top 3 trading rules?
Number 1, don't be stupid. Number 2, don't take more than 2 ads. As far as if you're wrong, don't keep adding to it. Just cut it eventually. Number 3, just trade well. I mean, make the smartest decisions that you can. So those are tough answers, but I feel like those are probably the 3 best ones.
What's one thing you do that other traders don't?
I feel like probably reading a lot of books. As it may be true, but it can put you early on different trends that you may not even think to look at.
One component in your trading that you want to improve?
Being able to hold longer with ideas that I know, well, that I perceive to be better. Sometimes I just cut the good winners too early.
Hard stops or mental stops?
Both, but I set hard stops.
What's your favorite trade of all time?
I'm gonna say a loser because it kind of did something in me. As far as Fannie Mae, I was shorting it like a banana at like 310. I was going crazy. Pretty much was all in. I covered at 322. The high of the day was 320, and then it dropped $1.50 like immediately after that. So knowing that I was right and taking the loss, it did something to me that day. I laid on the floor for like an hour going, what am I doing? So.
How many stocks do you watch each day?
It varies at the beginning of the morning, but I'll watch, because I have a bunch of watch lists, hundreds. But I have 28 on my screen at once.
What industry are you most excited about right now?
Drones.
One last question, because I don't want to take up all of your time, but what advice would you give to new traders?
I've said this before, know who you are as a person before you get too deep into it. And also start with smaller amounts than you have. Obviously, if you have, 6 figures and you're jumping in the market, go down to, just above pattern day trading. So when you win and you likely will blow up, you don't lose it all, you lose a chunk of it. So that, and learn quickly what your risk tolerance is on different trades, because it's all about risk.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Cody. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I really appreciate it. You have a good one, Anthony.
You too. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. Thanks for watching.